I never really understood what she wanted from me. Self-expression? It can't just be that. I used to do paintings for her all the time. Pure self-expression, if you like. And the best thing I ever did for her when we were married sent her into a shit fit. It was our 5th anniversary, and we'd been fighting on and off for a couple of weeks, and I wanted to make it special for a change. What we'd been fighting about was this goddamn magazine cover I'd done for New York about Giuliani's wedding, the one to Judith Nathan. They wanted the obvious pastiche, Van Eyck's Wedding of John Arnolfini. So I did that, in oils on a real oak panel, just like the original. I got the arrogant hypocrisy on the face of the man, and the Persian cat self-satisfaction on the face of the woman. And I used the convex mirror behind them to paint in the wedding party. All the Poles and celebs, all grinning like skulls. And also I used the 10 little lunettes around the edge of the mirror to illustrate scenes from his career and the breakup of his 2 previous marriages. I mean, it was good. It was a real painting, not a cartoon, and it had some of the authority of the original. I brought it home after the magazine was finished with it, and she went ballistic. Her usual business about, how could I do this to myself? Like my talent was a god that had to be worshipped in a certain way, and how all the bozos at the magazine had no idea what I was doing. The details wouldn't even reproduce, and all the time I was wasting on crap like that. My only life. That was one of her phrases. How can you spend your only life this way? But I didn't see her spending her only life making the kind of money we needed for Milo. I mean, it wasn't like she was maximizing her talent in that little gallery when any of the big guys would have hired her in a heartbeat. She was that good. No, that was down to me, thank you. And around then was when I started in with the amphetamines to get more work out in my only life and bring in the cash. Anyway, about mid-May that year, a Sunday it was, one of the first really nice days we had, maybe a month before our anniversary. I was making coffee or something in the kitchen, and I heard this sound of giggling and laughter coming from our bedroom, and I went to the door, which was open just a slit, and I looked in. They were on the bed, Lottie and Milo. He must have been around 4 then, and they were playing some kind of tickling game. She was in a white batiste nightgown, and he was in Spider-Man PJs. And it just knocked me out. The sunlight streaming in and lighting them up on the white duvet and the brass of the bed glinting. It was like I was in on some secret, the kind of semi-erotic play that mothers and sons get into at that age. And for a second I almost remembered, like a sense memory, not like something in my head at all, doing the same kind of thing with my mother. And that afternoon I went to the loft and stretched and primed a biggish canvas, maybe 3 feet by 5, and I started painting what it was like. I made the boy slightly turned away from his mother, with an expression of delight on his face. And I had the mother sitting up in the center of the bed, braced on one arm, with her other arm extended, touching his head, her index finger barely wrapped in a dark curl of his hair. And I got lost in it, and for the next few weeks it was like a refuge. I'd grind out my daily bread and then turn back to it. And it was fine. Everything was working right. The child's mouth rendered with 3 quick strokes. Perfect. Glistening with the juice of life. And the same thing with the flesh tones of the mother's skin I knew like my own, showing through the translucent fabric of her gown in the morning light, pink and pearly. You could almost breathe in the bed scent of a woman. And it could have been just a genre piece, but it wasn't. The painted surface was alive and really existent, like it is in serious painting, not mere image at all. And I made the white duvet into what I really have to say was a gorgeous blizzard of the innumerable shades that white can take in the morning light, and the vital line of the mother's arm connecting her to the child, and the set of her haunch on the bed, and the other supporting arm, perfect, sculptural, vital. I couldn't believe it. And I wrapped it up, and I was so happy, and I thought she'd be too. But when she took the paper off, she just stared at it for a long time, as if she was stunned. And then she ran into the bedroom and burst into weeping, just sobbing her heart out. And when I went to her and asked her what was wrong, she said something crazy like, You're going to kill me. You're going to kill me. And it turned out that she didn't get that I could do stuff. I mean, in painting, for love, that I couldn't do for money. And she seemed to calm down, and we hung the damn thing in the bedroom, but she wouldn't talk about it, and it was like a bad fairy gift in a fairy tale. Instead of bringing us together like it was supposed to, it drove us apart. So after that, I didn't do anything but commercial work, which would have been fine, except around then Photoshop came in, and art directors who wanted pastiches of famous paintings could just buy the rights from Bill Gates or whomever and pop in new faces, and they even had tools to give that impressionistic effect, or craquelure, and there went half my business. So I had to work twice as hard, especially after we found out that our Milo had those bad lungs. Familial pulmonary dystrophy, a disease not attracting much research attention and barely controllable by means of a set of drugs that might have been compounded of powdered diamonds if you looked at the damn bills. And naturally I had to up my own dosage. And one night I lost it and wrecked our house, and apparently I slugged Lottie, and they had to come and take me away. I say apparently because I can't really recall any of it. I went into rehab like a good boy and did my program, but when I got out, she said she couldn't live with me anymore. She couldn't carry the weight of the demons. I moved back into my loft then, and since then I've been living from check to check. Magazine work mainly, newspapers, a few ads, never enough, sinking ever deeper into plastic hell, IRS hell. Maybe. That brings us up to last summer, a day in June. I was at Vanity Fair that day talking to Gerstein, the art editor, about a project they wanted to do, a series of pieces on the great beauties of the day illustrated with oil portraits in the manner of the great masters. They got the idea, of course, from the movie Girl with a Pearl Earring, Vermeer and Scarlett Johansson, that was the hook, Madonna by Leonardo, ho-ho, Kate Blanchett by Gainsborough, Jennifer Lopez by Goya, Gwyneth Paltrow by Ang, Kate Winslet by... they hadn't decided yet. And he thought of me, naturally. And he went on and on about how he had to fight management to get to do them as real paintings rather than photoshopped photos. And I asked him had they agreed to pose, and he looked at me funny and said, of course they're not going to pose. You'll work from existing photographs. I argued with him for a while, but it's impossible to get anyone, especially a magazine fart director, to understand the difference between a posed portrait and one cocked up from photographs. And he knew I needed the money, so we shook on it, $2,500 per, a bargain. I suggested Velasquez for Kate Winslet, and he said, great idea. I called Lottie and told her about the sale, just to hear her happy with me for once, and she was. I could practically hear her mental calculator clicking over the phone. There was a fairly short deadline on the project, and by the time I got back to the loft, I was thinking about painting and trying not to think about where in the bottomless money pit I was going to stuff that $12,500. Since I turned whore, I have all the art books, and it's kind of cool to look through them and summon up the originals I've seen. The funny thing is, I know that when I actually have the palette set up and brush in hand, I won't give a shit what the finished product is. I'll be stoned off the process of painting. Lottie, in her art gallery head, used to calculate that I made about $8 an hour with the kind of work I put into a project, and I could never explain to her why I do it, why I have to work like that in order to get out of bed every morning. Because I knew what she would say. She would say, why don't you paint then for yourself, Chaz, and give up this cunnery? Then I'd get mad and say, how the fuck are we going to pay for Milo's goddamn pills? $5,000 a month at least. And are you going to pull that out of your little gallery? And then she'd say, but I can sell your work. Your work is wonderful. People would love to have your work. And there it would sit, like a fresh turd on the table. The thing that busted us up. Chaz Womack's principled refusal to paint real work for the commodity market. So I would storm out to the studio and work on a magazine cover or a record album and smoke dope until everything seemed just peachy. I was just sitting down with a book of Ingres portraits when the phone rang, and it was a secretary asking me if I would hold for Dr. Zubkov. and my belly dropped because I thought it was one of Milo's docs with more bad news. So when he came on and I figured out who it was and found out what he wanted, I was so relieved that I would have agreed to practically anything.